My name is Antonio Gallo, and I run this city. Every cop, every politician, every criminal on the street answers to me. My empire was built on one thing: information. I knew everything before it happened. But for 3 months I was blind. A rat was eating my organization from the inside out. Shipments vanished, meetings were ambushed, and 2 of my best men were dead. My top fixers, men who could find a ghost in a graveyard, found nothing. They were looking for a rival. They should have been looking at my shadows. Intro call to action, 44 words. The most dangerous person in the room is often the one nobody sees. If you believe true power lies in silence, like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that will keep you guessing. My name is Antonio Gallo. I wasn't born into this life. I carved my name into it with blood and steel. I took over the Falcone family when I was 25, after my father was gunned down in a restaurant. I learned early that trust is a currency for fools. Power is the only thing that matters. In my world, you are either a predator or prey. For 2 decades, I built an empire that was untouchable. My headquarters wasn't a gaudy penthouse. It was a reinforced concrete fortress, disguised as a warehouse with more surveillance than a government spy agency. My inner circle was small, composed of men I'd known my whole life. Or so I thought. My conflict wasn't with other families. It was with the idea of weakness. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I saw betrayal in every face, heard lies in every report. I was the king of a rotting kingdom, and the paranoia was eating me alive. I trusted my 2 top fixers, Marco, the tech genius who lived in the digital shadows, and Silvio, the enforcer who could pull a confession from a stone. They were my hands, my eyes, and my ears, and they were failing me. Every day the rat grew bolder, and I grew more desperate. I had all the power in the world, but I was losing control, and in my business, losing control is a death sentence. The incident that broke me happened on a Tuesday. It was supposed to be the biggest weapons deal of my career, one that would cement my power for another decade. Only 4 people knew the location of the exchange: me, Marco, Silvio, and the buyer. I was coordinating from my command center, watching the live drone feed. My men were in position. The buyers arrived. And then hellfire. The police didn't just raid the meeting, they ambushed it. They knew the routes, the contingencies, and the exact number of men I had. It was a setup from the inside. I watched helpless as millions of dollars went up in smoke, and 5 of my most loyal men were either cuffed or zipped into body bags. The rat wasn't just leaking information. They were trying to cut off the head of the snake. They were coming for me. That night I retreated to my private study, the one room no one entered without my permission. No one except her. Clara, my maid. She was mute. A shadow who drifted through the fortress, cleaning messes invisible to everyone. She entered silently to place a glass of whiskey on my desk, her eyes downcast. She saw the rage, the fear, and the broken glass from the decanter I'd thrown. She saw everything. And as always, she said nothing. The hunt began. I locked down the fortress. No one in, no one out. I put Marco and Silvio in charge of finding the traitor, and I watched them work. Marco, the tech wizard, tore our digital lives apart. He audited every server, scanned every bank account, and polygraphed every soldier in the organization. He spent days staring at code, his face lit only by the glow of his monitors. He found encrypted data fragments and ghost signals, but no source. He was chasing digital shadows. "The rat is good, boss," he'd say, sweat on his brow. "They're using military-grade encryption." A professional. Silvio, the enforcer, took a different approach. His world was physical. He was a man of intimidation and pain. He interviewed every man who survived the ambush, one by one, in the concrete basement. The sounds from those sessions were ugly, but they yielded nothing. The men were loyal, scared, and just as clueless as I was. Silvio was frustrated. "They don't know anything, Antonio," he spat, washing blood from his hands. "Whoever it is, they're clean." Too clean. The tension in the fortress became suffocating. My men turned on each other. Fights broke out. The loyalty I had built my life on was crumbling into suspicion. I was losing my grip. Through all this, Elara continued her routine. She swept the floors, polished the glass, and served the meals. She moved through the rooms where Marco and Silvio held their frantic, whispered arguments. She poured coffee for men being polygraphed. She cleaned the blood from the basement floor. I started to notice her. She was the only person who wasn't scared or agitated. She was just present. She watched. When Silvio would slam his fist on the table, she wouldn't flinch. When Marco would curse at his screens, she would silently refill his water. One evening, I saw her pause outside my study. She was watching Silvio talk to one of the guards, a small, subtle exchange. Then she just bowed her head and kept walking. She was a ghost, and I was starting to realize ghosts see everything. It all came to a head a week later. I called Marco and Silvio to my study. I was at my breaking point. "Find me a name," I roared, "or I'll have your heads on a pike." "This ends tonight!" Marco looked defeated. "Boss, I've run every diagnostic. There are no leads. The tech is a dead end. I think it might be Silvio." Silvio lunged at him. "You bastard! I've bled for this family. It's you, the rat, hiding behind his computers." They were about to draw on each other. The room was thick with smoke and betrayal. My entire operation was imploding. "Enough!" I yelled, pulling my own sidearm. As I stood there, ready to kill them both just to end the noise, the study door opened. It was Elara. She held a silver tray with a pitcher of water. She never interrupted a meeting. Never. "Get out!" Silvio snarled at her, not even looking. But Elara didn't move. She stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with a terror I had never seen on her face before. Her hands were shaking so badly the glasses on the tray rattled. I lowered my gun. "Elara?" She wouldn't look at me. She was staring at Silvio. No, not at Silvio, but at his hand. The hand he was using to gesture at Marco. She took one shuddering step into the room. Then, with a trembling finger, she pointed, not at Marco, the tech genius, not at Silvio, the N-log. She pointed at Marco. She held my gaze, her eyes screaming the truth. Marco, who I'd known since we were kids. He froze. In that instant, I knew. She wasn't accusing him. She was identifying him. "She's lying." "She's a mute idiot," Marco shouted, his composure finally breaking. He lunged for her. Silvio, faster than I'd ever seen him move, tackled Marco to the ground. The climax wasn't a gunshot. It was silence breaking. Elara let the tray crash to the floor, the sound of shattering glass echoing the end of my old world. Marco was taken to the basement. The fortress fell into a stunned, deathly quiet. I sat alone in my study, the floor glittering with broken glass and water. Silvio had searched Marco and found a small device in the heel of his shoe, a location-scrambling data transmitter. The military-grade encryption Marco was chasing was his own. He had been selling me out to a rival family for months, planning to take my seat. I sent for Elara. She entered timidly, thinking she was in trouble. I poured 2 glasses of whiskey and slid one to her. She just stared at it. "How?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She looked hesitant, then walked to my desk and picked up a pen and a notepad. Her handwriting was neat, precise. "He never looked at the cameras," she wrote. "Everyone else in this fortress, even you, looks at the security screens when they walk by." He never did. He didn't need to. He already knew where they were pointing. I stared at the words. It was so simple. So obvious. She kept writing. He always touched his left earbud before the police showed up on the news. I thought it was a habit. But today, when you yelled, he did it again. He was listening to someone, waiting for orders. My top fixers were looking for data, for confessions, for a complex digital trail. They were looking for a mastermind. Elara was just watching a man. She saw the habits, the tics, the tiny breaks in his mask that everyone else, including me, was too busy and too loud to notice. I had built my empire on noise, on threats, on complicated systems and brute force. I had filled my fortress with experts and killers, but the one person who had truly been loyal, the one person who had actually been watching, was the one I never even registered as being in the room. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was a weapon. It was observation. It was clarity. I had been a fool. I dealt with Marco personally. The betrayal cut deep, but the lesson cut deeper. The next day I started to change how I operated. I stopped running my organization from a command center and started walking the floors again. I stopped listening to reports and started watching my men. I learned, as Elara had, that a man's eyes tell you more than his words ever will. My relationship with Elara shifted completely. She was no longer a maid. I moved her into the office adjoining my study, giving her a desk, a computer, and a new title, My Osservatore. My observer, Silvio, humbled and deeply loyal after his name was cleared, was the first to show her respect. He would bring her a coffee every morning, nod and say, "Signorina." The rest of the men were confused at first. This mute woman who used to wash their dishes was now sitting in on my most sensitive meetings. I began learning sign language. At first it was just simple words: traitor, shipment, danger. But soon I learned to ask her questions. "What did you see?" She would reply with her hands or on her notepad, offering insights that were devastatingly accurate. "That capo smiles too much. He's hiding something. The new bodyguard watches your hands, not your face. He's not protecting you. He's waiting for a signal." She was right every single time. She wasn't just my eyes. She was my new consigliere. A bond formed between us, forged not in romance but in a shared silent understanding of the world. I found myself trusting her more than anyone I had ever known. I learned her story. Her father had crossed a rival don, and they had taken her voice as payment. They thought they had silenced her. They had no idea they had just taught her to listen. 6 months later, I called a sit-down with the heads of the other major families. The betrayal by Marco had weakened my position, and they were circling, smelling blood. They arrived at my fortress, arrogant and condescending, expecting to negotiate my surrender or carve up my territory. They filed into my conference room, a collection of old, dangerous men in expensive suits. I was at the head of the table. At my right hand, in the seat usually reserved for my top fixer, was a single empty chair. "Antonio," one don said, "we hear you've had internal problems. Perhaps you are no longer fit to manage your affairs." "You're right," I said. The room went silent. My old way of doing things was flawed. I trusted noise. I trusted computers. I trusted men who talked a good game. Just then the door opened and Elara walked in. She wasn't in a maid's uniform. She was dressed in a simple, elegant black dress, her hair pulled back. She walked with a quiet confidence that filled the room. The other dons looked confused. Some insulted that a woman, a servant, would be allowed in. Elara sat in the empty chair at my right hand. I looked at the men. "This is Elara. She is my new consigliere." One of them laughed. "A mute girl? This is your solution, Gallo? Have you gone mad?" I held up a hand. Then I turned to Elara. Using the sign language I had spent months perfecting, I asked her, "What do we know about Don Falcone?" Elara signed back, her movements fluid and sharp. "He is skimming from the joint shipping container fund. He uses his nephew's dry cleaning business to launder the money." I turned back to Falcone, whose face had gone pale. "You will repay the fund with 50% interest by tomorrow, or I will send Silvio to audit your nephew's books." I turned to Elara again. "Don Moretti?" She signed. "He has been meeting secretly with the police commissioner. He is offering up Falcone in exchange for immunity on his own smuggling operation." Moretti leaped to his feet. "Lies!" I slammed my fist on the table. "I have the photographs. Sit down." My gesture was clear. I had restructured my entire organization. I had abandoned the old ways. My new power didn't come from guns or from money. It came from clarity. Elara, the woman they had all dismissed, was now the most powerful person in the room besides me. She held all their secrets because she was the only one who had ever bothered to watch. They came in expecting to see a broken king. They left terrified of the silent queen. In a world filled with liars, boasters, and gunmen, the most powerful person is never the one making the most noise. True power is found in the silence of observation. It's the ability to see the truth that everyone else is too busy to notice. The loudest threats are just a distraction. The real danger is always in the whisper, the nervous tick, or the look in someone's eyes. If this story made you see the world a little differently, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video. Let us know in the comments, what's the smallest detail you've ever noticed that told the biggest story?